Today on Tishi Dilko, we're going to tell you 10 things you should know to prepare for culture shock if you're moving to Canada.
subscribe ให้พวกเราด้วยนะคะ
Sadi Krab, welcome to Tishi Dilko. Today we're going to tell you 10 things you need to know to help you prepare for culture shock if moving to Canada or North America in general. And before we get into it, make sure to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and hit the like button on this video. For those of you thinking about moving to Canada or planning a move here in the near future, especially if you're coming from Thailand, our list today includes things which are common in everyday life for Canadians, but are specifically not common for most Thai people. And we hope these things help you prepare for some culture shock before moving here. First on the list, drinking tap water. It is common to drink water straight out of the tap all across the country. Most cities, towns have very clean, drinkable, actually even really good, just tasting tap water. So it is not necessarily common to be buying bottled water all the time. It's more common actually to have a reusable, refillable, metal, plastic water bottle that you can refill just right out of the tap. Now, some people will buy, bottled water, filtered water filters, etc. But it's safe, clean water right out of the tap. Important to know, however, if you are traveling to a cottage or a cabin area, these types of, vacation rentals, etc., the water at those locations isn't necessarily drinkable out of the tap. So that's just a little side note. Second item, no bidets. Now, this was actually a new one for me, as I didn't know in Thailand, bidet is a common thing in every home. We in Canada and across all of North America, even Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, all these different countries, the common way is toilet paper. So if you are moving to any of these countries, you should be prepared to, get used to using toilet paper, or know there are options, whether it's Amazon or different vendors, to buy the hose-style bidet or the European-style bidet to actually just self-hook up in your own bathroom. We actually bought one for our washroom, and it is very simple. It took about 5 minutes to install, and now we have both options. Third item, most Canadians use credit cards or debit cards to pay for things rather than cash. So again, in Thailand, having just been there, I know how prevalent cash and using cash to pay for things still is. However, in Canada, while most businesses still accept cash, there are only a few that probably don't all across the country. The most common payment methods are credit cards or debit cards. So regardless of where you are, these are the most common payment methods. And even beyond the physical card, using your phone to tap with Apple or Google Pay, these types of payment methods are even more common than cash in Canada. Number 4, tipping in restaurants. Now this one, it's actually kind of a hot button issue even in Canada because, we generally tip if we're at a sit-down restaurant. You're getting pretty good service. You tip at the end of the meal, whether it's 15, 18, 20%, which generally the server will then split that tip with all of the restaurant staff. So all the servers are splitting those tips across the staff, and you do add it to your bill. It's a general customary thing. Not everyone does, but it is quite common to do this. Now, you will also notice, especially more nowadays, if you're at, say, not necessarily like all coffee shops, but some of these where you're just going in to pay, take your food or your beverage, the debit machine or the credit machine may ask for a tip. This, I would say, is less common to tip at these places, and it actually is frustrating for a lot of Canadians to have to or be asked for a tip. So generally in Canada, the norm is, if you are actually being served for a restaurant meal, this is when you would tip at the end when paying for your bill. Number 5, make sure to read your clothing labels carefully. And this is specifically for when you're washing your clothes, because coming from Thailand, you're probably more used to having your clothes hang dry outside. It's a hot country. And, sometimes we do that in Canada if you have a backyard to do so. However, for almost half the year, it's winter, and so we use a clothes dryer. And generally, you have a washer and a dryer right next or stacked. This is to dry your clothes after you wash them. Now, the reason to read labels is that many different fabrics of clothing, some of them can't withstand the dryer heat, some of them need, a low dryer setting, and, honestly, some clothes in the dryer will completely shrink down. And actually, Tuiham behind the camera here has shrunk some of my sweaters over the past year, putting them in the dryer. So now I have like a little boy sweater that doesn't fit. So in reading the clothes labels that you buy here, they'll tell you, if they're machine washable, they can be put in the dryer, they'll tell you heat settings, etc. All that can be found on the labels. Number 6, attending a house party. Being invited to a house party at a friend's or, friend's family's home. A common practice if you are invited to a house party in Canada is to ask in advance if there's anything you can bring. So depending on the group of friends or where you're being invited to, some parties, the hosts will include, whether it's food or drink. Some will, include food but want you to bring your own beverages. And it really depends on the people, but also the age too. So, younger folks, if you held a house party, generally speaking, the host would provide some food and everyone would kind of bring their own beverage. However, for example, if I go to a family party of my older relatives, it's kind of just bring yourself and everything is provided. So it's not necessarily equal for everyone. It's always great to ask if there's anything you can bring. And often if there's a formal invitation, it will likely say on that invitation as well what's kind of provided by the host. Number 7, not everyone necessarily wants to be in a photo or especially a photo that's posted on social media. And it's not that, it's not allowed to take selfies and random photos. So we know in a lot of Asian countries, people love taking photos, posting a lot on social media. And in Canada, it's not like that's not true. It's just very dependent on the individual or the group of people you're hanging out with and taking a photo with. Social media here, some people have really strong feelings against it. And you might hear people just be direct and say, they'd rather not have their photo taken. And it's not that they're upset, it's just kind of their preference. So it's not as maybe common for everyone to just be so ready to have their photo taken with selfies posted all across the internet. And just a quick thing in addition to this topic, if taking random photos and there's children around and you are capturing, a child's space, it's a good practice to make sure you get permission from the parents. They might not want their child featured on a random social media page, so please just be mindful of that as well. Number 8. We know we've mentioned this topic many times, extreme weather. When thinking about Canada, it's probably top of mind to think of extremely cold winters. However, it's not just the extreme cold. You want to be mindful of extreme heat as well. So it is good to be prepared for both, especially depending on when you are planning to move to Canada and when you're arriving. Know that if you're arriving in June, you probably don't have to fill your suitcase with lots of heavy, bulky winter clothing. You can get that here. And we do have another video specifically on, dressing for the weather in Canada. You can check that video out in the description below. Number 9. Canadian people are generally very friendly, but can also be very direct. So, similar to a lot of Thai people, Canadians are, very friendly, polite. Generally, if you're asking for directions or asking a question, for the most part, we're happy to help out. But what's different is, Canadians aren't necessarily shy about sharing their opinion or asking questions compared to some Thai people who could be quite shy or asking a direct question, really asking for what you need. So it's important to know in Canada, if someone is directly asking you something, being very clear, that's just kind of how we're socialized to speak, really being honest and forward with our questions and what we're thinking. Now, for some, this may come across as aggressive, but it's really just being forthright and straightforward with what we're asking, so we're providing clarity. And actually, for newcomers in Canada, it's good to start practicing this, because if you are conversing with a Canadian, it will actually be helpful for them, especially if they're having trouble understanding accent, to hear a direct question or kind of be told some clarity on what you're saying. You don't have to feel bad about it, and it will actually benefit the conversation. I should also call out that depending on the social group you're in, it could be very common to have even a direct, passionate debate about a hot button issue, a popular topic. And there could be disagreement and debates, and people generally share their opinions openly. Even if there's disagreement, at the end, everyone's still friends. These passionate arguments can be common depending on the social group you're in within Canada. Last but not least, number 10. This has to do with the greetings people provide in Canada, whether saying hello and goodbye. And it really has to do with the fact that there's a variety of them depending on the person. Especially now that COVID lockdowns are over, it's quite common actually for a Canadian to shake someone's hand the first time. And it's also common that, depending on who you're with, if you are closer with them, to, hug hello or hug goodbye. So this is also a common thing in Canada. If you are close to someone, generally the greeting may be a little more intimate than if they're a stranger to you. So just so you know, there are many types of ways in Canada to say hello and say goodbye. And generally it's dependent on how well you know the person you're greeting. We really hope this list has helped you learn some of the societal norms of living in Canada and how we interact, so that it may, reduce or minimize some of your culture shock. And really, regardless of where a person travels or moves to, there is going to be some culture shock. And we think knowing these things can make it a little bit easier to meet new people, make friends and just interact in everyday life in Canada. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and share this content. If you do have any suggestions, please feel free to let us know in the comments. We really do appreciate all the support. Sadi Kap. See you next video.